Are we ready up in the booth? Good to go? Okay. Welcome everyone to our Community and Health Services Committee, our first meeting for this term of council. Welcome to council members, staff, and the public, those who are here in person, and those that are joining us online. I'd like to invite Julie Hale, our committee clerk, to do the roll call.
Regional Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig. Present. Councillor Deutschman. Here. Chair Erb.
Here.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Hunick.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett.
Here.
Councillor McCabe.
Present.
Councillor Nowak. Councillor Salonen.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Vrbanovic. Councillor Williams.
Here.
Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Thank you. As we begin this meeting, we are again reminded that many of our homes and places of employment are situated on the land that is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Nottamassabi and Neutral people. And we recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to Waterloo region. And we also recognize the contributions Indigenous people have made in shaping and strengthening our community. We're grateful for this opportunity to live and work here and reaffirm our collective commitment to keep the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real and intentional in the region. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, thank you. Since a number of our delegations that are here today are related to the Upstream funding initiative, with committee's permission, we're going to bring that item 7.11 forward while we have the delegations here and have them speak. And so to begin, I might invite Fawzia and Paula Whitlow, if they want to first speak to the presentation that's been distributed earlier. We invite you to come to the podium and make any comments that you might have, and then we will see if there's any comments or questions from staff, and then we'll ask the delegations to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm unfortunately not feeling very well, so I'm home today. I'm going to start us out, and thank you very much for your time in advance. Sego, Squabego, good afternoon. I'm Paula Whitlow, Wolf Clan from the Mohawk Nation and resident of 6 Nations of the Grand River. I am the Director of Truth and Reconciliation, and I'm joined by my colleague Fawzia Beg, Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Our department, the Office of Reconciliation and Equity and Diversity and Inclusion, as we call ourselves, REDI, to shorten it out, REDI, is still very new and was created in response to the community calls for action and the region and council's commitment to truth and reconciliation, anti-racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're here today to present on 3 reports: Reconciliation, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Update, a Reconciliation and Equity Investment, and the Upstream Fund Update. Next slide, please, and I'm going to hand it over to Fawzia.
Thanks, Paula. Before we begin, we'd like to thank the community members who are going to be speaking here today as delegates. Thank you to Faduma, Olution, Pam, Robina, Marjorie, and Sheena. You'll be hearing from them soon, and I'm sure you'll be inspired by their passion as I have been as well. It's been an honor that we haven't had to do this alone, but alongside community like them. You'll see throughout our presentation that our work is very much not just for the community, not just because of the community, but about collaboration with community. Our work is ever evolving, but is deeply rooted in advancing the Truth and Reconciliation's calls to action and the more recent Community Safety Wellbeing Plan for Waterloo Region. We're also focused on continual engagement emerging research and best practices, and listening to and collaborating on other local calls to action for issues related to colonialism, racism, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, and other forms of systemic oppression and discrimination. Next slide. Our mission is to advance truth and reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion by creating systemic change within the organization and facilitating community-wide systems-level change. In simpler terms, we are working to make a community where everyone has the opportunity to thrive by transforming the way the region collaborates internally and with community. Next slide. And back to Paula.
Thank you, Fazia. We will talk more in depth about some of these later on, and to briefly highlight our current programs and initiatives. While our department is less than a year old, and with a small and new team, who I think are in the audience today, so please give a wave, we're proud to have stepped into this work with both feet. In a short time, we have launched large-scale initiatives, begun the work of creating systemic change, and begun to embed principles of reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion into all areas of the region's work. Next slide, please. I joined the region in September of this year and found that despite my role being new, there were already ways that the principles of truth and reconciliation were being used to guide not just the region of Waterloo's work, but across the other municipalities within our region. I've been able to join and work with the Reconciliation Action Partnership, which is a collaborative comprised of staff representatives from cities and townships across the region who are dedicated to advancing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, especially those specifically geared to municipalities. Through 6 subcommittees dedicated to various topics like training, land opportunities, communications, cultural landscapes, and accountability, we are able to work collaboratively to have a united dedication to moving this work forward. As a region, we have been able to be part of this group since its inception, and with the work of the group have helped to advance new policies like the Indigenous fee waiver policy, created cross-municipal training for staff and council, and work with the community on a powwow and in support of the Every Child Matters crosswalk. Next slide, please. Here at the region, I have taken on the Indigenous Space Needs Assessment. We know that members of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities have told the region there is a deep need for Indigenous space, and as a region, we are working to listen, learn, and create ideas. I'm currently working with an independent Indigenous consultant on engagement with the community. These sessions often look like sitting at a table with coffee or tea and listening deeply to not just what is required for space, but most importantly, building relationships between myself and the community and the region and the community. At this point, we are listening to needs and trying to map out shared priorities and attributes across the community. As this work progresses, Council will continue to be updated on our findings and recommendations. Next slide, please, and back to Fazia.
Thanks, Paula. The work that our office does, as you can see, is intertwined. When preparing to speak about it today, it didn't feel sufficient to have a list of items because our work and the values we use to guide this work is not linear, but closer to an ecosystem that all work together towards a shared goal of a thriving community. We may be able to do each part individually, but we are better when we're working in relationship with everything else we do and everyone we are connected with. While Truth and Reconciliation is its own separate and distinct initiative, we know that it needs relationship building, systems level change, and more. While the Upstream and Reconciliation and Equity Investment Funds have models designed using research, best practice, they also incorporate the importance of lived experience, a community-first model of engagement, and an anti-oppression approach. The Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, a framework co-designed with community, guides and intersects with our work to ensure we are aligned with the region's and this community's greater goals. You'll see some blank circles on that screen, and these are there because we know there's much more to come, whether it's projects, values, new relationships, and connections. Our work is meant to be malleable, to be open to change, and to evolve. Next slide. And next slide again. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the reconciliation and equity investments. A little bit more detail will be shared with you today. In the report that was provided in the Reconciliation Equity Investment Update, this council-created fund is being used to improve the social, economic, and health of First Nation, Inuit, Métis, African, Caribbean, and Black identifying, racialized, and other marginalized communities who continue to face systemic barriers. The investment is another example of how we're making strides towards systemic change. With 39 regional projects aimed at transforming regional services to remove barriers to access, increase cultural safety, and better reflect community needs, all of this launched because of this investment. This has been a significant undertaking by many regional staff. We are removing silos, collaborating and innovating together and with community, with so many more opportunities ahead. The programs range across departments and respond to community priorities. Some examples include an Indigenous-led child and family support program for early child development, a portable rent assistance program for Indigenous and African, Caribbean, Black, and racialized community members, the expansion of the Affordable Transit Pass program, the incredible Dibajimowan Stories from the Land exhibit at Kensiling Regional Museum, which you can still catch until April, and so much more that you can see all outlined in the appendices. In addition to improving regional services, these funds have been used to support the Immigrant Economic Wellbeing Fund, administered by the Immigration Partnership, and to directly fund grassroots community initiatives led by and serving Indigenous, African, Caribbean, Black identifying, racialized, and other historically underfunded communities with the $2 million Equity Community Capacity Fund that was allocated in partnership with the Upstream Fund. Next slide. As the work of this fund progresses, we will continue to share data and stories of impact. However, today I want to offer some quotes from 3 people who have participated in the Portable Rent Assistance Program, which are on the screen. Reading through these stories, you'll see that in a short time, the impact of this fund can be immense and has shown that there is a deep need for sustained investment in our community, that by investing in people, we are creating a better region for all. We're seeing that if we invest in something like rent, we're reducing stress, contributing to stable housing, and improving well-being. This takes pressure off of other services and increases well-being in incredible ways. People feel cared for, included, and valued. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. The last item I'll be presenting on today is the Upstream Fund. At the start, well, so you will hear from the delegations, so sorry, things are a little bit out of order, but we're adaptive and responsive. So you will be hearing from the delegations later in this meeting today. And a lot of these folks have been part of this initiative from the beginning. And they, as you will hear, really speak to it better than we ever could. I want to thank them again for coming and taking the time to speak today about their work and the impact it has had. They and many others have been on a journey of change with the region over several months, building trust and relationships by contributing to the development of the model, participating in collaborative events, and sharing their ideas, visions, programs, and services for funding. Some of these relationships have existed for a while. Many started with the vaccine rollout, grew with the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, and many are brand new relationships created through the collaborative process of the Upstream Fund. It's only been a year. The Upstream Fund has showcased the desire and commitment for change and hope that our community holds. We're seeing that the community can be its own catalyst for change when resources are made available. Sorry. Staff and departments from across the organization have worked collaboratively to bring to life a fund rooted in the council-approved concept of Upstream, meaning a fund that addresses root cause of systemic issues and requires changing systems like distribution of wealth, power, and decision-making, identifies prevention of harm as the ultimate goal, and a fund that allows communities to have self-determination and continue to grow and explore the ways in which grassroots organizations are working towards upstream solutions that are most impactful and meaningful to the people they serve. Communities have always been able to take care of themselves and others. This fund is designed to provide resourcing and collaboration and opportunities to support this care. This has been about decolonizing the way we work as a municipality, about changing our processes to reflect the needs and outcomes that matter most. We all know the saying, you cannot do the same thing over and over again and expect something different in results. So we changed our ways. With this was no small feat. This meant changing the way we do finance, the way we do legal contracts, and the way we make decisions, the way we measure impact, and the way we work together. We're still at the beginning of this journey, but we have learned a lot along the way and will continue to learn and improve as we move forward. This community-driven model has shown that we can and should transfer power to the community to seed outcomes that will best serve their needs. Next slide. And while a lot of this work is about a story of a changing community for the better, I wanted to briefly share some data and details listed on this slide. But before I do, I feel it's important to take a moment to reflect on the path leading up to now. We started in the spring of this year with environmental scan and reviews of best practices for funding models, practices, and policies. We then engaged and collaborated with many in the community to share this information and build a model for Upstream Fund. This included online surveys, engagement sessions, in-depth conversations, either one-on-one or in small groups, with over 100 community leaders, local funders, and other municipal staff to listen and learn about the barriers that communities face in accessing funding and support. We then brought what we learned back to council and community and engaged in a co-design process to develop the three-step model. I have to pause for a moment and to extend my gratitude and appreciation for the many community leaders who engage in this process with us, and because of their leadership, wisdom, and willingness to trust, we are here today. So bringing this to the slide that you have in front of you, in September, we launched the very first step of the Upstream model, which was the community collaborative sessions, with 12 sessions across 3 cities and 2 townships. There was 30 additional one-on-one sessions supporting grant writing and applications, with over 124 participants totally engaged. Over 100 applications were received through the open call, with requests totaling over $12 million. The second step started with the courageous 12-member Community Change Committee. This group of community-selected members stepped up to prioritize the needs of the community and allocate funding. This committee leaned into what it meant to be working towards upstream solutions in this community, and what our community has said it needs through the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan and the information that many had shared through the Upstream engagement. Using a rigorous process and facilitated by a well-experienced facilitator in the community, Jillian Wells, they were successfully able to distribute these resources. They poured over 100 proposals, reviewing, discussing, and reflecting to allocate this funding. Their passion and commitment are beyond admirable, and I'd like to give a sincere thank you to all the members of that committee. In the end, 41 recipients received funding to address the root causes of harm. Next slide. So next steps for the Upstream Fund are outlined in the report, and we include the last step of the model, which is sharing stories of impact, and we will continue to update council and the community. I want to leave you with this thought. This community model is more than just about the dollars. As we know, the needs go far beyond the available resources. This fund is about the spirit of collaboration, honesty, trust, and respect among all of us, and we will continue to work with community to build connections, support collaboration, and honor the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. I'm going to turn it back to Paula to close us out.
Next slide, please. Or is that the end?
Yep, that's the
Okay.
end.
Awesome. So that brings us to the end of what I apologize was a long presentation, but was hopefully helpful to bring you up to speed on the incredible ways the region is advancing truth and reconciliation as well as equity, diversity, and inclusion. There's a long road ahead of us, but there's also a long road behind us, and that created systems that caused harm and perpetuated oppression. However, what we think is most important is that we are on the journey. We are moving forward, and we're doing this work with staff, council, and community to co-create a better region. Yahweh, and that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Fazia and Paula. A very fulsome presentation. Thank you. I'm wondering if there are any questions from council members.
Yeah, if the request to speak won't allow us to come up. Well done, ladies. Well done. I want to congratulate you on what you've accomplished. Earlier, Councilor McCabe, you asked about where I said I was reading somewhere about the stories, and they were in the presentation there. That shows you do make a difference, and thank you so much for that.
Is this working, or are we going by hands here?
It's not working for me.
Okay.
Through you,
Councilor James?
Herb. Thank you. It is absolutely wonderful to see this work and how it's grounded in community and knowing the impact it's going to make on these organizations and for generations. So I do have a question, though, with some of the outreach that was done. Can you provide insight into the response from some of the townships with this funding?
Yeah, so we intentionally engaged with different planning tables across the townships and hosted 2 events in partnership there. And really the feedback that came from the townships is that they would like to spend more time collaborating together on what Upstream means strategically for the townships. And I think that you'll see one of the proposals does reflect that thinking, as well as other ways in which that they're already been working with community organizations in townships towards this work. So I think that townships definitely continue to be a priority community for this work and for outreach. And I think you'll see on the selection committee, we tried to be intentional about representation for rural priorities as well, and as well as the 12-member community change committee had that as well. And so that's all feedback that we were hearing through community leaders in our townships and rural communities.
Okay, thank you. Just one more follow-up question. In terms of the funding allotments, is it provided primarily for 1 year, over a series of years? Is it spread out throughout the various organizations in terms of the timeline?
When we were doing the engagements, we heard time and time again the importance of sustainability and how difficult it is for community organizations to be up against the clock all the time trying to secure funding and sustainability. And one of the things that they said would be ideal is that if the funding could be larger than or longer than a year. And so what's happened is that we do have multi-year funding, but up to 2 years is what we've started with. And from this year, we'll continue to grow and learn and hear how that is working, and think about other ways that we can continue to evolve that. But right now, there are a mix of 1 year and 2 year fundings.
Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just want to congratulate you all on the work that you're doing. I think these investments, or however we want to describe them, they will be investments in making our community a better place, because as many of us know, every dollar we're able to give to a community group, they find a way to turn it into 5 to 10 to a whole lot more, because they appreciate what they're receiving and they find ways to make more out of it. And I just want to give a shout out. We received an email earlier today from Tom Galloway. And if he's watching, I'm sure he's beaming right now if he's back from his special place in the Huron Natural area that he likes to tweet pictures about. But anyway, congratulations on that. I look forward to hearing more success stories about what comes out of this fund, and just to hearing more about the great things that happen in Waterloo region through all of this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? All right, we have a number of delegations. I think all of them are in person, but I'm not sure if there's any online. 2 of them that are online. Okay, and so just as a reminder to those that are here as delegations, both in person and virtually, I just want to remind you of a few guidelines that we function with. When you're called upon, please come. Make your way to the podium, or turn your video on if you're invited to speak. And if you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting, interrupting counselors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about counselors, staff, or others, turning your camera on at an inappropriate time, and any hate speech or defamatory comments. And one last reminder for delegations, please don't take any offense if council members don't ask you any questions. The purpose is for us today is to hear and to listen to what you're saying. And probably the main reason we wouldn't ask you any questions is because the presentation you made has been so detailed and left no questions unanswered. So the first delegation that I have listed is Olusegun Elinka, and I apologize if I am not doing a proper pronunciation of your name. You have 5 minutes to speak, Olusegun.
Thank you for this opportunity. Good afternoon. I stand on all existing protocols. For 18 years, change slides, please. Adventure for Change has been in a startup phase. As a registered charity, there were only 2 choices going forward: to grow or die. Actually, in 2019, the organization almost died. Please change slides. Adventure for Change kept its program running in the community through COVID. And this caused the community to gravitate towards this available engagement during a pandemic. Change slide, please. The irony became one of numerical growth in the midst of lack, pain, sadness, uncertainty, and confusion. Please change slides. This growth was followed by the donation of space that matched the growth. Yet, there was no finance to match the space and population growth. Change slide, please. Coming in as a new leader, tasked with responding to these growth dimensions, I wore my organizational development hat and quickly identified the 2 growth gaps that needed to be filled. Otherwise, a great and contributing organization will die. With my board's permission, I began to design systems, policies, processes, and procedures to grow the organization. At the same time, we began to reach out to community leaders, partners, and donors with a cry for help to fund and support the growth that was already happening to us. Slide change, please. The upstream funds of the Waterloo region was one of our biggest asks. We were desperate to keep A4C going in the space that we had donated from March to December 2022. We did not want to lose that space because the growth was there anyway. So we needed money to keep that space for at least 2 years while we continue to look for permanent space. The Waterloo region's upstream funds came to our rescue. How? 1, we got all the money to keep the donated space for at least 2 years. The joy in the eyes of the Adventure for Change staff and the community cannot be described. There were songs, chants, dancing. Moms expressed things like, finally, we have a space that we can call our own. We now have a safe space that we can continue existing programs and build new ones so youths can drop in after school and not go home to an overpopulated house. At this point, I will take a pause to formally thank the region of Waterloo's council and the Upstream funds for this opportunity. We're grateful that you listened to us and have helped us meet our need of growth. Number two, with the growth in numbers, some technical leadership gaps were also identified, and a request to help fund this was part of our ask to the Upstream funds. Again, we got money to hire these people. Now we can meet the needs of the community in a holistic way by hiring a male racialized MSW to work with the male youth and men. This was a big gap in what we were doing. We will also make the dream of a 6-year part-time team member come true, as Nahid becomes a full-time team member come January. The team can do more now because of the Upstream funds. Number three, part of this money was also dedicated to our
Lucia,
strategic...
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to remind you that your 5 minutes is up in a few minutes. Okay, thank you.
Part of the money will also be dedicated to our strategic planning and implementation, board development, and training of team members. Change of slide. In conclusion, for grassroots organizations, it is not the millions that make the difference in the transition from startup to growth, to scaling, or maturity. It is the upstream kind of funds, the ones that support the preventive, intentional, and deep work to keep a community together. It is the funds that help a woman who doesn't speak English before coming into Canada learn to communicate through English classes. These funds help this woman learn to use computer and also learn a skill or go back to school. It is that kind of money that makes community youth dream of a desired future post-high school and achieve it because of the help of volunteers that serve as mentors to these youths. Finally, it is the kind of money that makes a grade 2 child who was unable to read during COVID, as there was no one at home to support his academics or her academics, through SK and grade 1. Now this kid, through the Better Beginning Waterloo program, in that space, through those staffings, and through the capacity development we will get, can learn how to speak English, and so we close pandemic gaps, one child at a time. We continue to work to align with 4 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals: no poverty, decent work and economic growth, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just remain there if you wouldn't mind. I think there are one question, at least from Councillor McCabe from Council.
Yeah, a comment more than a question. Sorry, through you, Chair. To just say thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and thank you, Council, for funding this wonderful organization in Waterloo. And I've been through this centre during the campaign, but certainly know the kind of work and the heart that and the time that Aleutian in a short period of time has put into this organization, and has made a big difference, and will make a big, has made a big difference in the past, and will make an even bigger difference going forward. So we're really thrilled that you were successful in getting this. The city obviously is going to continue to work with you as well, and yeah, we look forward to some more partnerships. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Pam Fair, representing the Kaleidoscope. Our next delegation is Pam Fair, representing the Kaleidoscope of Collaborative. There are a group with you, Pam. Altogether, you have 5 minutes for your group.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks for having us. I guess the first comment I would make is that we're honored to be here today, and I put a few words on paper, thinking about what we might say, and then as we were meeting in CAO office before, I was listening to my colleagues here, particularly Marjorie, speak. I was like, oh, I'm not going to talk, actually, because you need to speak. So what you'll hear today is the start of impact, I guess. And you heard it from Aleutian, and I think you'll hear it again in the words of 3 other organizations. We'll introduce each other, and then I'll say just a few words, and then I'll let my friends speak. So I'm up here because I'm acting as a catalyst to a project that was funded by Upstream called the Grassroots Growth Alliance. So I'll first ask Rubina to introduce herself and her organization, and then you'll hear from the rest.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rubina Bilal, and I'm the co-chair of Muslim Women of Cambridge. Muslim Women of Cambridge is a group of passionate women who came together in 2017 to bridge the gap between the Muslim community and the larger community by fostering open communication to better understand each other's values and beliefs. Our vision is Muslim women inspiring and promoting a culturally inclusive and respectful community. We believe in continuous learning, building awareness, and giving back to the community. Our organization worked tirelessly to build awareness about the issues important to be addressed, whether it is about spreading awareness about Ramadan, our community iftar, to educate people what our fasting and Eid celebration is all about, or denouncing Bill 21 to ban religious symbol at work, or condemning Islamophobia and hate incidents within the community. Muslim Women of Cambridge is trying its best to play its role. When it comes to giving back to the community, our organization took the lead to have an annual food drive for the Food Bank Cambridge, where we distributed tons of pounds of halal meat to serve the community and cooked multiple times for the homeless and those in need. During COVID times, we not only fundraise for the frontline workers in the Cambridge Memorial Hospital, but also distributed hundreds of the masks to the community. Continuous learning is the part of our ongoing growth. We try to engage ourselves by training our members and community to be updated and to be the beneficial part of the society. We held different programs to educate women on financial literacy, investing in health, parenting techniques, and communication styles. We also have some programs for the newcomers and the refugees to give them the sense of belonging into their new country. This is just some brief overview of our work, and we cannot see back to look forward to work with the region of Waterloo, provided with the Upstream Waterloo funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Sorry to interrupt. Just as a reminder, we're down to 2 minutes, and I'm going to ask for the indulgence of my colleagues around the council table. This is a really important conversation that we want to hear from you, and so we're going to extend some of that time, but try if there's no repetition in some of the comments. Thank you.
Hello, respected councillors. My name is Faduma Musa. I am the Executive Director of the Somali Canadian Association of Waterloo Region. We are an organization that has been around since 1994, however, has gone through many transformations as we continue to engage in the community in which we live in. I will jump right into the impact of this grant in the interest of time. This is like watering the roots of the tree for all of our organizations. The impact that this grant will have, all of our organizations, and I can specifically speak for the Somali Canadian Association of Waterloo Region, have tirelessly worked in a volunteer basis and have put our hearts into the work that we do because we believe in the cause and the impact of the communities that we serve. With no resources, we have continued to do this for over 20 years in this region, from recreational programming to homework supports for the youth and the children, to multi-generational literacy programs for women and children. We have done all of that work with a lack of resources. And for once, I can say this is the face of equity. And I can say that boldly and wholeheartedly. This is the face of equity, to come together, to be able to speak our truth, to be able to talk about our needs and have been listened to and actually see it in action. We have been in many conversations, have sat at many tables, voicing our concerns, voicing our needs, and they've just stayed there. They have not gone further. But the Upstream funding is true call to action. And I invite all of you, as part of the well-being and safety of our community, everything that we do, that all of the grassroots organization in this region do, it goes back to the well-being and safety of our community. You're all a part of that community, you live in that community, and you serve that community. I invite all of you to come see what we do in this community, all of these organizations and the great work that they do.
Good afternoon. My name is Marjorie Knight, and I'm representing Rhythm and Blues Cambridge. Rhythm and Blues, unlike a lot of these people, we started in 2019, so we're young, but we are very ambitious. I work in the community with those who are experiencing poverty, and this is where I drew my community from. So I have moms who are on OW or ODSP, who have children, who have issues. And I said, okay, these are the issues. Let's work on those issues. You tell me what we need to do, and let's get it done. I went to the first meeting of Upstream Waterloo and did my usual thing. I had something to say, and so I said it. And it was well received, and I was encouraged by what I heard there. And we went away because the bottom line is that we're using our money, we're using our houses, we're begging people for money to help us. And the problem with when you beg people for money is that they tie you and bind you. And sometimes you do events and people don't even realize that they're your events because of who has given you the money. So you become secondary and you feel as if you're not a part of things. Upstream Waterloo said that they would change this. Okay. I will tell you that when we got the email that said that we were being funded, there was a period of time when literally all we did was stand, jump up and down and scream at each other and say, show me the email again. How much did they say? It was pandemonium. Because we had gotten to the point where people were coming to us and saying, oh, wow, I saw you do that program. Can you do it for us here? Can we collaborate with you and do that there? And we're at the point where we couldn't move. We were poised for growth, explosive growth if you want the truth of it. But we couldn't move forward because we had no financing. Now that we have this finance, the world has opened up in front of us, and we are so excited to be able to actually do the programming we want to do, the programming that our community wants us to do, what other people are begging us to come and do with them, to partner with them. So we will be partnering with everybody. Trust me, at some point in time, yes, we will. But the important part is that grassroots had no pathway to funding in the past. We were turned down because we weren't incorporated, because we weren't a nonprofit, because we didn't this, we didn't that. Walls and walls of barriers. And Upstream has knocked down those walls. But they're not just giving us some money and throwing us out there and say, all right, miracles. They are providing mentorship, help, direction to help us grow responsibly, to help us learn fiscal responsibility, to understand what regulations and rules we need to work within, to understand how we can really grow as an organization. Maybe we'll become incorporated in the future. Maybe we'll become a nonprofit in the future. But right now, we don't have to rush to it. And we can learn the lessons and absorb the help to help us to grow as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam, are you going to?
We're at time, so I'll just say one line, which is, you can hear the impact already. So what I ask of you as counselors is, please don't stop. Please sit in this new, exciting, and potentially uncomfortable space of a different way of doing things with trust-based funding, and listen with an open and learning stance and heart to what can happen and the transformation that can happen in our community because of this initiative that you've boldly undertaken and that you've funded. Support it like hope in the community, water it, shine light on it, help it to grow. I think great things will come, so thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is Sheena Merling.
Hello, everyone. So as you know, my name is Sheena Merling, but my spiritual name is Benoji Monado Quail, Children of the Spirit. Upstream funding, by listening to these wonderful ladies behind me, I speak on behalf of the children and you guys. They just inspired me. I didn't know what I would say today. We all go into a room and we feel intimidated. But Gazagan Healing Space is how I became in my journey. I started a year ago, a woman shy of what I wanted to do with my life. I was scared of my own identity and coming forward as an Indigenous woman. But the children showed me that the Every Child Matters movement is where my voice came. In Victoria Park, you'll notice the footprints where I connected with so many community members, helped them heal in different ways, but at the same time they were healing me as that little girl. So this Upstream funding gave me a voice to bring in space, but now build more even allies, and helping the community grow and see the warriors within ourselves. I reminded the children on September 16th, when the Every Child Matters crosswalk was unveiled. We were the first in the nation to have an official stamp. I stood in front of the children, and like I'm standing in front of you and speaking from the heart, I could have done a slide, but honestly, that's not me in a box. I knew the best way to come here was to speak from the heart, the opportunities of growth within ourselves, of how we became where we are today, reminding each other of the love. And that's what Gazagan stands for. It means I love you. I want to give that space to children and youth because we've seen over time, even us as adults, we have a lot of healing to do. So that's what the healing space is about. Do I know where it's going to be? No. But what I do know is that children have woken my soul. They remind me to plant my feet, even standing here bare feet, because I can't bring the medicines in, so what do I do next? I go with what I know, and I follow my heart. So I welcome you all to learn my story. I welcome you to bring your gifts forward and teach those around you the heart that your ancestors have shown you, the love that we all have to give each other. If we close our eyes, that heartbeat, we share that together because we're all here in this moment. And that's what I want to remind the children, young to old. So thank you for having me. Thank you guys for inspiring me. And most of all, Gazagan.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I'm like, I want to run. That's the bear, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And I think the final delegation is Fadmua Musi.
I'm not going to say much. Everything has been said, but I'd like to acknowledge that we've entered an intentional era, and I hope that we continue to do the work and walk with community. The process of the Upstream funding has been a process that included us all, that made us all feel like we belong, that we matter, and our communities matter. And I am so grateful for that opportunity. SCAR was one of the organizations that has participated in the many, many conversations with Fazia and her team at the region. And a lot of the questions that the organizations that came to the table asked were, what are you going to do with this information? We've told you what we need. What are you going to do with it? And again, the call to action and the fact that all of the things that we have suggested in the process, that it was led by community, that it was trust-based, and the relationships have begun to be built, is one that I'm grateful for. I will continue to work with great partners like this, and like I've said before, to be able to empower the communities that have been doing this work in the community with the trust of the community on the front lines for free, volunteer-based, because they believe in the cause, to be able to compensate them for their work, to be able to thank them for all of the things they have done over the years in this region to contribute, is equity, and I hope we continue to have these conversations and bring their voices forward. And I thank the Upstream funding and all of those who were involved behind the scenes to make that possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? So, it feels like we've been on some sacred ground with you folks. And I'm glad you've been able to share that conviction and emotion with us, so we understand the significance of this upstream funding, and hopefully the difference that it's going to make in the community. So thanks for making yourselves vulnerable and honest. It's been a very enlightening presentation. And so thank you for delegating, particularly to staff, for the hard and long work that you did in putting into this and into the community consultation that has taken place. And as a result, we have these current recommendations, which are very significant before us today. And we know this is the beginning of a long journey, investing in the better outcomes of the residents of the region of Waterloo. And I know the selection process was intense. It was hard work, and so thanks for working so collaboratively to make this so meaningful for all of you. And we all recognize that these positive outcomes and the funding initiatives and the people served, however, it's going to take patience and persistence in seeing the outcomes become reality in our community, because we know this is visionary groundworking, which you're proud of, and we're all proud to be engaged with. And we're committed to see systems changed, and we thank you for your willingness to be part of that in our region. So thank you. I don't think we have to take any action on the recommendation. The action was you being here. Thank you. So we have a couple other delegations who are either online or in person, and they are related to Councillor Deutschman's notice of motion, which is 9.1. And so again, with permission of Council, I'd like to bring that forward on the agenda, and we'll deal with it while we have delegations here or online. The first delegation we have is Reagan Bruce, who I think is online.
Hello, I am.
Okay, your camera's not,
sorry. Am I there now?
Your camera's on. Thank you. And I'm wondering if you were online earlier, Reagan, when I highlighted some of the.
It's been a very hard few years.
Pardon me?
Hello?
Hello? I just wanted.
Hi.
I wanted to double check that you were online earlier when I highlighted some of the guidelines for those appearing as delegations.
Of course, yes, sir.
You were?
Yes, I was.
Okay. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. It's a very hard few years. Our last council faced challenges that I can't imagine anyone expected to cross. You all will too. Thank you for the efforts I know are to come from each of you throughout this term. Even when I disagree with your collective decision, I always appreciate the weight upon you to make such vital choices for this community. There are people depending on you in many ways. We've elected you to visions that are life-changing and awfully deep. impact us, not only as individuals, but as well in guiding us in who we collectively become. Conflict-ridden, often violent evictions of people whose ability to exist, their literal efforts to survive, is all that's actually taking place. People shuffled off, their possessions destroyed, their world shattered, trauma, pain. We cannot become this, and I don't believe it's who we already are. An encampment is not adequate housing. An encampment should never be the only choice a human has, but it is right now, for more reasons than I could list to you in my small allotment of time here today. I don't have a solution. There's no quick fix. Yet I also can't find myself okay with our current direction, nor how it risks damaging our communal unity, how it might actually break us all. We have housing and shelter plans that we're working on. Well, we clearly need both of these. They also take time. Our interim housing solutions are progressing. We are learning. We are evolving. We are doing our best, all of us. But every member of this community, too, has suffered the impact of COVID in some form. Isolation, financial struggles, health challenges. We're all tired. When the choice was made by those representing us last term to initiate the current application to the courts, respectfully, we took the wrong approach. This is not a decision for courts, but instead for you, our listeners. Well, you've just started in your roles. As you know, there will be few small decisions. More often than not, the choices you will need to make will deeply impact people, and many people at that. This is one of those times. If the judge's verdict returns allowing the eviction, you can decide when to enact it, or you can leave it in the hands of others and turn away. I'm asking you to be the ones to make this decision, as we've entrusted you to do so in casting our most recent votes, because we believe you capable of who we are in Waterloo Region. We believe you capable of reflecting our hearts. Just because the court may return a verdict permitting eviction, it does not mean that we must do so. Nor does it make it right and moral action. Nothing about this is inevitable. I'm asking for your bravery, for you to guide us in being a positive example, one of accountability and compassion, instead of seeing us err as the next devastating news piece. An encampment is not a solution, yet until we find better options and have these available, for many people with many reasons, it is the only option that we have. Penalizing the individuals in these situations is not the way. In the world today, this is not a life choice, but instead evidence of our systemic failures. We have many of them. So I'm asking you to consider the human rights of these people, and to base your decisions supporting both of these. I'm asking you to stand in your elected roles and to assess for yourselves the current circumstances, situation, before evicting or struggling to shake responsibility for these choices to our courts. I'm asking you to lead us, to unite us, and to support us in doing better and becoming better people. But most importantly, I'm asking you to guide us in strengthening our community without allowing us to tear it apart. Thank you for hearing from me today.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Reagan? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. It's not a question of the delegation, and I was considering calling a point of order but I thought I'd give her the courtesy of letting her speak. But I just want to say that I feel really uncomfortable about this process because this is a very unusual, as far as I can understand, in terms of the region, like the process around the regional council. So I just want to put on the table that I feel very uncomfortable about the fact that someone who's actually employed by a councillor, which I think is an issue that we possibly need to discuss, is actually making a delegation in support of that councillor. So I'm not sure how anyone else feels about this, but I feel like this. Personally, I feel like this might be not the most appropriate way to conduct business. So maybe, and the answer might be to have a conversation offline or in closed session about this arrangement. Mm-hmm. I'll put that out there to you, Chair.
Okay. I don't know if I can raise my hand to respond. Am I allowed?
Excuse me. I don't want to engage in debate between councillors and delegation. And so Councillor McCabe has raised an issue of concern here. Is your comment, Ms. Brzee, on for information, or because I don't want to get in any debate between council and delegations?
It's with no intention to debate, just for clarity's sake, offering that I'm here today as an independent citizen. And regardless of my employment, I've had no participation in working on this motion in any way. I'm just being the advocate that I was and have been for the last many years, and thus my joining here today on this topic.
Thank you. Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you. I heard someone mention "here we go," but I don't want anyone to be restricted from being able to speak freely. If anyone knows Reagan Broussais, they know that she's been a long-time advocate on behalf of homeless people in our community, very self-sacrificing. So I speak to her defense in terms of someone who has given much to this community, worked very hard with this community, and many within the community know of her and the good work that she does. I know I see Dave Alton there from lived experience, and he would know Reagan Broussais as well in terms of the work that she does. So she's here, as she just said, and I apologize that Councillor McCabe is uncomfortable, but again, she's a member of the community with a lot of experience in this area and free to speak her mind. Thank you.
I don't think Councillor McCabe's questions were related to the ability or the expertise of Ms. Broussais to speak, but more on the appropriateness of her position in relation to you as a councillor. Councillor McCabe?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak for myself, thank you, but Councillor Deutschmann. But no, I do, I appreciate the opportunity for anyone from our community to come in and speak on a variety of issues, and I think that's really important. And anyone who knows me knows that I regularly encourage people to do that at any level of government. Whether in forum or individually with elected officials. So that is not the issue. The issue is, as I said, I feel really uncomfortable because of the arrangement, the employment arrangement that you've entered into, and I think that is something that we as a council should discuss. I feel that we should, so that we get some clarity around. Possibly what's in scope and what's not in scope. I don't know. I don't want to put terms of reference on it, but I'll just table that now. That I think this is something that we should discuss. And I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I think let's deal with the issue that's at hand right now, and that can be for future conversation. The next delegation is Megan Snyder, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, Chantal, you had your hand up. I apologize.
It's okay, Chair. We can move on. Thank you.
No question? Okay. Yeah. You're okay? Okay. All right. Megan, are you online?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Welcome. Were you present earlier when I outlined the guidelines for delegations?
Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're good to go. You got 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I am speaking today in support of Councillor Deutschmann's notice of motion as a resident of Ward 10 in Kitchener and as a member of Unsheltered Campaign. Today I am not going to speak to the incredible harm that encampment evictions cause, as powerfully described by Reagan, because the evidence is plentiful. And if any councillors would like to discuss the harm and know more, you are so very welcome to join us in an Unsheltered Campaign meeting anytime. I am instead going to talk about accountability. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, particularly in the wake of the election this fall, which has resulted in a newly composed regional council offering Waterloo Region a bouquet of fresh perspectives, diverse lived experiences, and a bevy of heartfelt commitments. In fact, a lot of the commitments made during the municipal election this fall concerned issues of housing and homelessness in our region. During the election and in its aftermath, we at Unsheltered Campaign repeatedly heard similar reports from candidates that during canvassing, housing was an issue brought up at almost every door. We all watched conversations about housing and the region's responsibility on sheltered residents take place during debates and town halls and on social media. These are urgent conversations not only for unhoused residents, but also for housed residents concerned about human rights violations potentially taking place in Waterloo Region. Housed and unhoused residents of this region advocated for a compassionate, rights-based, humane, innovative response to homelessness, and they deserve to be heard and have their voices count. During the election, Unsheltered Campaign created a pledge that candidates were invited to sign, calling for a human rights-based approach to housing and homelessness, a commitment to advocacy for ending Waterloo Regional Council's lawsuit against residents and others involved in the 100 Victoria Street encampment, and a commitment to advocacy for the sanctioning the allowance of all encampments on regional land as an interim measure to keep unsheltered residents safer while they await permanent housing. 4 signatories of this pledge were elected to and now sit on Waterloo Regional Council. I have to wonder why these regional councillors and all current regional councillors are going to be held accountable for a decision made before the election, before the most current reflection of and response to the voices of the people living in Waterloo Region. And if the current council is not accountable, who is? Who will be accountable to the voters that chose this current regional council? If residents of the 100 Victoria Street encampment are indeed evicted, even though the decision will ultimately come from the courts, there will likely be backlash, as we have seen with evictions before. And I fear that that backlash could color all of the current regional council with one brush, regardless of who was part of the decision made earlier this year and who was not. I can only imagine that that is a challenging situation at the beginning of a 4-year term, particularly for new councillors. So Councillor Deutschman's motion offers a different way forward, a way that offers accountability to voters, that asks the crucial question of what else is possible in this region, and cracks open a door to the possibility of a more progressive response, one that reflects the courageous, innovative, compassionate, and rights-based work that I know Waterloo Region values and encourages in all other areas. Thank you much.
Thanks, Megan. 4 minutes. Good job. Are there any questions? Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Megan. I've been on this council for 8 years now, and it's always our decision. Council staff, the number of staff that times we've turned down staff has caused a lot of them to go gray. And I'm looking at a few of them now. So it's always our decision. They report to us, and then we either say, no, we're not going to do that, or we say, proceed. But we have the discussion. We always, always have had the final say. We have never curtailed to anyone else, nor do we ever plan to. And if you met anyone on this council and tried to tell them that they're going to do what somebody else tells them to do, it'd be an interesting conversation. So yes, we always take that responsibility, and we will always continue to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just for clarification, the encampment policy, which is a policy of the Regional Waterloo, clearly indicates that it's not council that makes the decision on evictions. It is the commissioner responsible for whatever land is currently being occupied or a delegate in consultation with the CAO and the regional solicitor, and council is informed of the decision to evict. So just for clarification for Megan's purposes and the information she just received. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you very much for your perspective, Megan. And through you, Chair, I wasn't aware that members of the community could come into council meetings in support of particular motions. Is this a common thing that I wasn't aware of before? Okay.
I
Thank
couldn't
you.
understand. I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm wondering if someone could help me respond to that. I have a bit of a hearing challenge and couldn't hear clearly the question.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair, my question was whether or not it's common for members of the public to come in specifically addressing motions of particular council members. But I think my colleagues have clarified that. Thank you so much. And thank you for your perspective, Megan.
Yeah, so the question, is it common for the public to come and speak in support of notices of motions that the council members have made? And my response would be yes. Pardon? For and against. Or against. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part of it. Or against.
So please forgive me.
Yes. Yes and yes.
Please forgive my procedural ignorance. I'm just making sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. We have one more delegation, David Alton, who registered after the 24 hours, and so you have 3 minutes, David, who is not unfamiliar to that podium.
Greeting, Council. I just wanted to first off thank the members who were able to come last week to the Lived Expertise orientation. I really hope it was insightful for you and excited for longer term relationship building with you. And the many councillors who weren't able to come, I'm really excited for future opportunities for us to collaborate on that. In regards to the motion, the Lived Expertise Working Group has already shared thoughts through the past several months on the court case, and so I just wanted to summarize some of them because many of you are new to the table and weren't part of those previous conversations. So this summer, when the council was discussing the interim housing solutions, the working group delegated multiple times through that process, and there were several points I think directly applied to Councillor Deutschman's motion. The first was specifically that they had a recommendation regarding evictions and the court case. They had recommended that council not proceed with the court case. Obviously, we're pretty far down the line in that front, but I think similar in vein is that Councillor Deutschman's motion of not proceeding with eviction until you as a council have time to process and make that decision. I think that is in spirit with what the Lived Expertise Working Group was saying in those delegations. Another very important theme that they brought forward and they've been advocating in all their work that they've done so far is around the importance of decriminalizing homelessness. And so I think when we're thinking of evicting people who are sleeping in a tent, we are giving them the message that being homeless is criminal, that is not allowed, and that they then are not allowed in our community. Because where are these people going to go who are in this encampment and many other unsheltered communities? And so I really hope that through Councillor Deutschman's motion, you can see, start thinking it through the lens of what does it look like to take a decriminalized approach to homelessness, so that the people who are experiencing this level of housing marginalization where they do not feel safe in shelters and they do not have access to shelters or they do not have access to housing, that they still have options and that they are still welcome in their community and they are deserving of respect and deserving of relationships. And I think allowing yourselves the time as a council to consult with them, to make that decision, when those comes up, it makes sure that you are holding that relationship in hand when you are making these decisions. Another piece that was talking about was the importance of building trust with communities.
David, sorry to interrupt.
I just see that. I think
just a reminder. Okay, thank
you. No problems. I also, think the idea about building trust is really important. The whole purpose of the Lived Expertise Working Group, right, is to build into your processes longer-term engagement with these communities. And I hope when you think of you as council taking responsibility for these decisions, that you are also thinking about how can we build in these processes of longer term relationship building and longer term lived expertise engagement into this decision making. So I think motion is in line with what the Lived Expertise Working Group has already said, and I'm excited for us to work together more as we navigate these complicated conversations.
Thank you. For running the marathon. Are there any any questions of David? Okay. Thanks to all of those who delegated on this specific issue. So we have a notice of motion that was distributed by Councillor Deutschmann, and I will invite him to speak on it if there is a seconder to get it on the floor. Seconded by Councillor Craig. Thank you. Councillor Deutschmann, you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Chair Erb. First of all, I want to thank the delegations that have come forward to speak this evening. David, Megan, and Reagan, and also the message that is in front of you from Waterloo Region, Yes in My Backyard. I think all of them have succinctly put and eloquently put what the intention of the motion was, which is simply to deal with a process here and better define a process with respect to, in particular, two encampments. I just want to reiterate, this in no way is meant to reflect on any of the legal matters, the application. That is before Judge Valenti right now and in the hands of Judge Valenti, and this was in no way an intention to interfere with that process at all. However, that being said, obviously for all of us here, the issue of homelessness was during the campaign the #1 concern and continues to be our #1 concern, as is clearly reflected in the work that we continue to do through Commissioner Sweeney and his team and everyone else that is participating in that. And so what I'd like to suggest, Chair, with respect to this, is that this motion actually be deferred until such time as we have the decision from Justice Valenti, and that this motion then is brought back to the next committee meeting following the receipt of that decision for discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Craig, you'll second that? So a motion of deferral over the main. We got the main motion on the floor. Deferral. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So any debate on the deferral? Just want to make sure that I'm correct on procedure.
I don't know. Is there debate on a deferral motion?
No,
I think it's.
But I'm just trying to clarify so we're not making any mistakes here.
Right. Yeah. So there's time and place has been suggested in the motion to a point after the decision from Justice Valenti is received. And so there's a seconder, and I think we can proceed to vote on this.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I thank Councillor Deutschmann for deferring the motion as many of us requested earlier. So thank you.
Yeah, so the just to be clear for the clerk's department, for the timing, when it would be brought back in place.
So,
okay. The only thing that can be debated is timing and place. Sorry.
Right. So just for clarification, the chair is asking when, and so the time would be at the next committee meeting following the receipt of the decision of Justice Valenti, and the place would be here, I guess.
Okay. All right.
Chair.
Councillor Harris.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, obviously, you know, we've got a mover and a seconder that brought forward a motion who are now moving and seconding a deferral of the motion, which I think is somewhat odd. But I guess in their purview to do so. So I'm trying to think of how I'm gonna vote on this one. Maybe I'm just killing a bit of time here while I think, but you know, I do feel that you know, this motion perhaps, you know, although allowed by me speaking to your. Oh.
Okay. I think we need to call the question here unless there's any, clerks is nodding yes. So all those in favor of the deferral? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Chair Redden.
I will be supporting this deferral, and I would tell you that I think for me personally, the fact that this is coming after the court's resolution of this issue provides a lot of clarity for the community. So I'm happy to support the deferral.
Okay, we're going to get the colored boxes up on your screen, and you're going to vote for this, or vote, not necessarily for it, but you're going to vote. Oh, okay. Just one at a time here, just so we're clear on what's happening. Can the clerks get us a motion of deferral on, okay, so just let's take a second here and take a deep breath.
Above the motion that says to defer it, and then it will read that motion.
Okay, so I think the intent is to add one line above the existing motion that this motion will be deferred until after the Judge Valentia has issued his decision. That's okay? So can you get that up, Aaron, on the screen, or Julia? Okay, it's coming. Yeah, yes. Just by this here, yeah. So we can now vote. Has everyone voted? And so 12 in favor and 3 opposed. Okay. Okay. So we are now on to the consent agenda items. And any items that on the agenda can be approved in one motion, or we can remove them and deal with them individually. Anyone want any of the consent item agendas removed separately? Can I then have a motion that we would deal with all of them? Moved by Councillor Fox and seconded by Councillor Wolf. Okay, can we vote on the screen again? Okay, we're now on to the regular agenda. Did anybody ever think we were going to get here? 7.11, we've dealt with that one already. The next one is the recommendation on affordable housing. And we have that report before us. Ryan Petitpierre and Kellyanne are both here. Ryan is prepared to speak to the report if anybody would like to have him do so, or for any questions. No questions of the report. I would then ask for a mover and a seconder for the report. Moved by Councillor Sargent, seconded by Councillor McCabe. All those in favor? All those in favor? Use your screens to vote again. And, you know, I just want to remind council members when looking at this report that at this RFP that we've the staff have been able to negotiate 30 years for affordable housing. When we started our pilot project for Building Better Futures in 21, we were at 25 years. And some of the feedback we got from the community was, let's try and push this out a bit further. And we've been able to do that. So hats off to staff for making that happen and another 5 years of affordable housing. And we've all heard of the Union Cooperative that has been buying some rental units that are available. And so let's dream in 30 years from now that if the people that own this present building are not prepared to keep it in its current state of affordable housing, that organizations like Union Cooperative will still be around and would be willing to pick up this property, and it will be affordable in perpetuity. And so good work in the 30 years, and let's hope it can go beyond that. Thank you for all the work on it. And we voted on that, right? Okay. Yeah. And that was carried. Yep, okay. Just 1 second here. Okay, the council information package was distributed. Was received for information unless there's some questions from council members. Under other business, we dealt with the notice of motion previously. The next meeting is on January the 10th, 2023. Just as a reminder, we need to go back into closed, so don't everybody leave. Do we need a motion to do that? And so we need a motion to go back into closed. Moved by Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Redmond. All those in favor? All those opposed? we're going into closed, and we're going downstairs to do. Oh, we need a motion to adjourn. Excuse me. Moved by Councillor Schatz and seconded by Councillor Foxton. All in favor?